The sun beat down on the Gobi Desert with no mercy. Dr. Jin-Ho Park wiped sweat from his forehead as he carefully brushed sand away from something that caught his eye. After 3 weeks of finding nothing important, this small glint of metal made his heart race. "Yun, come look at this," he called to his colleague. Dr. Yim Kim hurried over, her steps careful around the marked dig site. She crouched beside Jin-Ho, her eyes widening as she saw what he had found. "Is that metal?" she asked, her voice dropping to a whisper even though only their small team was around for miles. Jin-Ho nodded. "At a pre-Bronze Age site, it shouldn't be here." The metal fragment was small, about the size of a coin, but it wasn't corroded like ancient metals should be. It shined in the harsh sunlight as if it had been made yesterday. "This doesn't make sense," Yun said, taking out her magnifying glass. She gasped when she looked closer. "Jin-Ho, look at these markings." Jin-Ho took the glass and examined the fragment. Tiny lines covered the surface, too perfect and too small to be made by ancient tools. They formed patterns that reminded him of circuit boards, but that was impossible. "We need to date this right away," he said. Back at their camp that evening, Jin-Ho and Yun worked in their makeshift lab. The rest of their team, 6 graduate students and 2 other professors, were eating dinner outside. Jin-Ho had told them they found an interesting metal piece, but nothing more. "The test can't be right," Yun said, running the analysis again. "It says the metal is at least 15,000 years old." Jin-Ho stared at the computer screen. "That's before any known metal-working civilization. And look at this composition." Yun pointed to the results. "These elements don't match any natural metal on Earth. Some of these isotope ratios. I've never seen them before." Jin-Ho sat back in his chair, his mind racing. "If I didn't know better, I'd say this came from space." "Like a meteorite?" Yun asked. "No," Jin-Ho said slowly, "like something made in space." They worked through the night, finding more strange details. Under the electron microscope, they discovered that the tiny markings were actually words in a language they couldn't read and diagrams of what looked like star systems. "We need to keep this quiet until we understand what we're dealing with," Jin-Ho said as the first light of dawn came through the tent flap. Yun nodded, but she looked worried. "The university expects reports. The Korean government is funding this dig. We'll tell them we found unusual metal fragments that need more study," Jin-Ho said. "Nothing about the age or the strange composition. Not until we're sure." 2 days later, they found more fragments. Each piece fit together like a puzzle, forming what looked like part of a small device. Jin-Ho kept their real work hidden from the rest of the team, only sharing full details with Yun. One night, as they worked late, Jin-Ho noticed a small red dot on the tent wall. He frowned, then realized with a shock it was coming from outside, a laser pointer or scope. "Get down," he yelled, pulling Yun to the floor just as a bullet tore through the tent, hitting the computer. "What's happening?" Yun cried out. "Someone knows what we found," Jin-Ho said, his voice tight with fear. "And they don't want us to tell anyone." They crawled to the back of the tent as more shots rang out. Jin-Ho grabbed their notes and the metal fragments, stuffing them into his bag. "We need to run," he whispered. "Whoever this is, they'll kill us to keep this secret." Yun nodded, her face pale but determined. "Where do we go?" Jin-Ho thought quickly. "I have a friend in the archives in Seoul. If anyone can help us understand what this means, it's her." As they slipped out the back of the tent into the dark desert night, Jin-Ho knew their lives had changed forever. They had found something impossible, evidence that humans had technology far beyond what history taught us, thousands of years before we thought possible. And clearly, someone wanted that knowledge to stay buried. Ha-Won Lee yawned as she scanned another box of old government papers. Her job at the Korean National Archives was usually boring. Today was no different as she digitized files from the 1960s. 2 more hours, she whispered to herself, pushing her glasses up her nose. The basement archive was quiet except for the hum of the scanner. She opened a folder marked Scientific Research, Classified, and frowned. Most of these old classified files were about boring things like farm production or dam projects. But something caught her eye. A report about a 1967 expedition to a mountain cave in North Korea. HFY started reading, then sat up straight. The report described metal fragments found in a cave, with unusual properties and microscopic engravings. There were photos of the fragments that looked strange. Shiny metal pieces with tiny lines covering them. "This can't be a coincidence," she said, remembering the news from last week. Her friend Min had told her about 2 archaeologists who disappeared from a dig site in the Gobi Desert after finding something important. The university and government both said they had just left without notice, but Min didn't believe it. HFY quickly scanned the entire file. The report ended with, "All materials transferred to Joint International Committee under Protocol 7. Public knowledge restricted indefinitely." She looked around to make sure no one was watching, then copied the file to her private drive. She knew this might get her fired, but something felt very wrong. That night, HFY couldn't sleep. She searched online for information about the missing archaeologists. Their names were Dr. Jin-Ho Park and Dr. Yun Kim, both respected scientists who had worked on many digs together. Her phone rang, making her jump. The number was blocked. "Hello," she answered nervously. "Is this HFY Lee?" a tired male voice asked. "Who's asking?" "My name is Jin-Ho Park. Your friend Min gave me your number. I heard you work at the National Archives." HFY almost dropped her phone. "Dr. Park, everyone is looking for you." "I know. That's why we can't be found." "Listen carefully. Did you recently access files about a 1967 expedition?" HFY's heart pounded. "How did you know?" "Because someone just tried to break into your apartment building. You're being watched now." She ran to her window and peeked through the blinds. A black car was parked across the street. "What do I do?" she whispered. "Pack one small bag. Essential items only. Go out the back door in exactly 10 minutes. A taxi will be waiting, driver named Da. He's a friend. Don't use your phone or credit cards after this call." "But why?" "Because what you found connects to what we found," Jin-Ho said quickly. "This isn't just about some old metal. It's about the biggest secret in human history. I'll explain when you're safe." The call ended. HFY stood frozen for a moment, then rushed to pack. She didn't fully understand what was happening, but her instincts told her Dr. Park was telling the truth. 20 minutes later, she sat in a taxi driving out of Seoul. The driver, Da, was silent except to tell her to stay down when they passed certain areas. After an hour, they arrived at a small house in the countryside. Dad led her inside where 2 people waited. A tired-looking man and woman she recognized from news photos as Jin-Ho and Yun. "Thank you for coming," Jin-Ho said. "I'm sorry to drag you into this." "What is happening?" HFY asked. "What did I find? What did you find?" Jin-Ho placed a metal fragment on the table, similar to the ones in the old photos she had seen. "Evidence," he said simply. "Evidence that humans went to space thousands of years ago, and powerful people have been hiding this truth for decades." Yun nodded. "Every government on Earth is part of this cover-up. We need your help to find out why." HFY stared at the fragment. "There are more files in the archives. Many more." "Then that's where we start," Jin-Ho said. "But first, we need to understand what we're really looking for." Outside, the night was quiet, but all 3 felt the weight of invisible eyes watching, waiting for them to make a mistake. 3 weeks had passed since HFY joined Jin-Ho and Yun at the safe house. The small country home now looked like a war room. Maps covered the walls. Papers and photos were spread across every table. 3 laptops ran day and night, searching for patterns. "We need more help," Jin-Ho said one morning. "People with different skills." Yun nodded. "I have someone in mind. Soo Bin Kang, a quantum physicist. We studied together years ago. Can we trust her? HFY asked. After being followed and nearly caught twice while getting files from the archives, she had become careful. She questioned things others wouldn't, Yun said. And she once told me about strange energy readings she found in ancient sites. Jinho thought for a moment. Contact her. And I know a language expert who might help. Professor Ta Wu Choi. He studies dead languages but keeps quiet about his real interest, symbols that don't match any known human language. 2 days later, Su Bin and Tai Wu joined their group. Su Bin was a small woman with short hair and quick eyes that missed nothing. Tai Wu was older, with gray hair and glasses, but his energy matched the younger team members. These markings, Ta Wu said, studying the metal fragments under a microscope. They share patterns with symbols found in caves in Africa, South America, and Asia, all from different times, but somehow connected. Su Bin ran tests on the metal. This isn't just strange metal. It has quantum properties I've only seen in lab-created materials. And look at this. She pointed to a screen showing the atomic structure. These patterns don't happen in nature. The team worked day and night. HFY found more hidden files, each with pieces of the same story. Strange discoveries quickly hidden away by governments. Su Bin built special equipment to read energy signatures from the fragments. Ta Wu worked to decode the symbols. One night, Ta Wu jumped from his chair. I've got it. These aren't just words, they're coordinates. Everyone gathered around his computer. See these repeating patterns? They're star positions. And this, he pointed to a series of lines, this is a map of our solar system. Su Bin checked his work. He's right. And this point here, she pointed to a mark on the screen. It's showing a location in space. Where? Jinho asked. Su Bin looked up, her face pale. The dark side of the moon. The room went quiet. Are you saying humans went to the moon thousands of years ago? HFY finally asked. Not just went there, Yun said slowly. Based on these fragments, they built something there. The next morning, Jinho announced they needed to share their findings. They carefully wrote a paper explaining their discoveries, without revealing their location or all their evidence. 1 week later, the paper was rejected by every scientific journal. No explanation given. They're blocking us, Jinho said, pacing the room. Then HFY's secure email pinged. The message was short. Stop your research immediately. Final warning. That night, Su Bin set up a small satellite dish behind the house. We can use this to check lunar pictures from public satellites, she explained. If there's something on the moon, maybe we can see it. As the computer processed the images, a car pulled up outside. Everyone froze. Did anyone leave the house today? Jinho whispered. No one had. A man stepped out of the car. He wore a simple suit and looked ordinary, except for his watchful eyes. Get everything important, Jinho ordered quietly. We have a backup location. As they gathered their research, the computer beeped. An image appeared on screen, the far side of the moon. And there, just visible, was a structure that shouldn't exist. It's true, Yun whispered. It's all true. A knock came at the door. They looked at each other, afraid but determined. Whatever happens, Jinho said, the truth must get out. The knock at the door came again, louder this time. Jinho nodded to Yun, who quickly saved the moon image to a flash drive. Ta Wu and Su Bin moved to the back door while HFY gathered their most important notes. Jinho took a deep breath and opened the front door. The man in the suit stood calmly, hands empty at his sides. May I come in? You're in danger. Who are you? Jinho asked, blocking the doorway. My name is Jun Yun. I was military intelligence for 20 years. Now I'm retired. He looked over his shoulder. I'm not here to hurt you, but others will be coming soon who will. Something in the man's eyes made Jinho step aside. Jun entered quickly and closed the door. You have 5 minutes to convince us to trust you, Jinho said. Jun nodded. You found ancient technology that suggests humans had space travel capabilities thousands of years ago. You discovered coordinates pointing to a structure on the far side of the moon. And now powerful people want to stop you from telling anyone. The room went silent. How do you know this? Yun finally asked. Because I was part of the group keeping this secret. Jun took out an old ID card. Special Projects Division. We tracked discoveries like yours and buried them. Why are you helping us now? Su Bin asked, still standing near the back door. Because the public deserves the truth. Jun pulled a small drive from his pocket. This contains files I've collected over 30 years. Things I wasn't supposed to see or save. Jinho took the drive carefully. What's on it? Proof that major governments signed a secret agreement in 1954. They agreed to hide all evidence of humanity's previous advancement. The technology you found isn't alien, it's human. Created by an advanced human civilization that existed over 15,000 years ago. Haewon's eyes widened. All governments know this. The powerful ones do. They've been finding pieces of this past for decades. The space race wasn't about beating each other to the moon. It was about getting to the ruins there first. Jinho plugged the drive into his laptop. Files appeared, thousands of them. Photos of artifacts from around the world. Reports of strange discoveries. Maps of sites under military protection. This is... Jinho couldn't find the words. Why hide it? Ta Wu asked. Why keep this from people? Jun sat down heavily. Control. Think about it. Every religion, every history book, every understanding of human progress, all wrong. And the technology they'd been reverse engineering from these finds. It would change everything. What technology? Su Bin asked. Energy systems that never run out. Materials stronger than anything we can make today. Medical knowledge that could extend life by decades. Jun pointed to the laptop. It's all there. They've been feeding us these discoveries slowly, pretending they're new inventions. A car engine sounded outside. Then another. We need to leave, Jun said, standing quickly. They've tracked me here. Who's they? Yun asked. The Guardians, special agents from different countries who work together to keep this secret. They answer to no government. Jinho looked out the window. 3 black SUVs had parked down the road. There's a tunnel, Jun said, built during the war. Under the shed out back. It leads to a bunker half a mile away. We need to go now. They grabbed everything they could carry. As they hurried to the shed, Jun explained more. The moon base is just the beginning. There's evidence of human settlements on Mars from before the collapse. What collapse? Haewon asked as Jun opened a hidden door in the shed floor. Something happened 15,000 years ago. Something that nearly wiped humans out and sent survivors back to the Stone Age. Jun helped them into the dark tunnel. But first, we need to survive tonight. Then we can figure out how to tell the world. As they closed the tunnel door, they heard vehicles stopping outside the house. The hunt had begun. The bunker was small but well stocked. Metal walls surrounded them, with 6 cots, a bathroom, and enough food and water for weeks. Most importantly, it had computers and communication equipment. We should be safe here for now, Jun said, checking the security monitors. This place doesn't officially exist. Jinho opened his laptop. We need to look at these moon coordinates more carefully. Su Bin connected a small satellite dish to one of the computers. With this, we can access private satellite feeds. You can hack satellites? Haewon asked, surprised. Su Bin smiled slightly. I have friends who believe in open information. For hours, they studied Jun's files and worked to get better images of the moon location. Taiwu focused on translating more of the ancient language from the metal fragments. I think I have something, Su Bin finally said. Everyone gathered around her screen. The image showed the far side of the moon. Su Bin zoomed in on a dark area. At first, it looked like just another crater, but as she enhanced the image, they could see straight lines and regular shapes, things that nature doesn't make. That's a building, Yun whispered. Not just one building, Su Bin said, adjusting the image. Look at the pattern. It's a complex of structures, partially buried under moon dust. Jinho stared at the screen. This proves everything. Humans built on the moon thousands of years ago. There's more, Jum said. He pulled up another file from his drive. These are classified photos from military satellites with better cameras. Look at this one from 2 years ago. The new image showed the same area, but clearer, and near one of the ancient structures was something that made them all gasp. A modern rover with the NASA logo, half hidden in a shadow. They'd been exploring it, Ha-One said. NASA has been there. Not just NASA, Jones said grimly. Every country with space capabilities has secretly visited that site. They've been taking turns exploring and removing artifacts since the 1960s. The first moon landing, Jinho started, was partly a cover story, June finished. Yes, we went to the moon publicly, but secret missions came before and after. The public missions created a way to explain why we had moon rocks and other materials. Taiwu had been quiet, studying the ancient writing. Now he looked up. The symbols on the fragments match patterns on these structures, and I think I've translated part of it. It says something like, home of the star travelers, fourth colony of Earth. Fourth colony? Yun asked. That means there were at least 3 others. Mars, Jum said, and possibly moons of Jupiter and Saturn. There are hints in classified reports. Su Bin zoomed in further on the moon base. Look at this section here. The design. It matches mathematical principles we found in the fragments. And see these marks. They look like landing pads for spacecraft. How advanced were they? Ha-One asked. Far beyond us now, Jun said. The files suggest they had solved problems we still struggle with. Unlimited clean energy, faster than light travel, extending human lifespan by hundreds of years. But something happened, Jinho said. Something that ended it all. June nodded. The records call it the Great Fall. We don't know exactly what happened, but it sent humanity back to the Stone Age. Only small hints of the advanced knowledge survived in myths and legends. We need to tell people, Yun said firmly. This changes everything we know about human history. The question is how, Jinho said. No news organization would believe us. Governments would block any attempt to share this publicly. A light flashed on one of the security monitors. Someone was at the entrance to the bunker tunnel. They found us already. Ha-One asked, fear in her voice. June checked another monitor and relaxed slightly. No, it's someone else. Someone I contacted. Who? Jinho demanded. Someone with the resources to help us take the next step, Jum said, moving to open the door. Someone who can help us actually go to the moon. The bunker door opened to reveal a woman in her 40s with sharp eyes and a confident walk. She wore simple clothes, jeans, and a black jacket, but her watch and shoes were expensive. This is my son Wang, Jum said, CEO of Horizon Technologies. Everyone knew that name. Horizon Technologies was Korea's fastest-growing tech company, making everything from phones to satellite systems. So these are the troublemakers, my son said with a small smile. She placed her bag on the table and looked around at the group. June has told me what you've discovered. Show me your evidence. For the next hour, they showed my son everything. The metal fragments, the decoded writings, the satellite images of the moon base, and June's secret files. My son listened carefully, asking smart questions. When they finished, she sat back and took a deep breath. My father worked for the government, she said quietly. Before he died, he told me strange stories about hidden technologies. I thought they were just old man's tales. She looked at the moon images. Now I know he was trying to tell me the truth. Will you help us? Jinho asked. Yes, but first, you need to understand what we're really fighting against. My son opened her laptop. I've been following unusual money flows between governments and private companies for years. Something big has been happening. She showed them documents and charts. Money moving between countries that normally didn't work together. Secret projects with huge budgets but no public results. The conspiracy goes deeper than just hiding the past. My son explained. They've been using the ancient technology to build new things. Almost every major tech breakthrough of the last 70 years came from reverse engineering these artifacts. Smartphones, HFY asked. Based on ancient communication devices, the transistor, microchips, fiber optics, all inspired by recovered technology. Space travel, Subin asked. NASA's rockets were just the public face. The real advances happened in secret. Some agencies already have ships that can reach Mars in days, not months. That's impossible, Yun said. Jun shook his head. I've seen the hangar. The technology exists. Why keep all this secret? Ta Wu asked. Why not share it? Control, my son said simply. Think about it. Free energy would collapse the oil industry. Advanced medicine would change populations and economics. Space travel would open resources that would shift world power. She closed her laptop. Those in control want to stay in control. Jinho paced the small room. So the first moon landing was partly real, partly theater, Jun said. They needed a cover story for having moon samples. The astronauts did land on the moon, but in a safe area away from the ancient sites. Later, secret missions explored the real targets. The Cold War space race was never about beating each other to the moon. My son added. It was about which country could salvage the most ancient technology first. And the International Space Station? Yun asked. A way for countries to share findings without telling their people the truth, Jun said. The real work happens in secret bases. Su Bin had been quiet, thinking. There's something I don't understand. If this civilization was so advanced, what happened to them? What could destroy such power? My son and Jun exchanged looks. That's the question that keeps the secret keepers awake at night, my son said. Because the ancient records suggest they destroy themselves. Their power grew faster than their wisdom. The room fell silent as everyone considered this. So what do we do now? HFY finally asked. My son stood up. We go to the source. I have a private space program, officially for satellite launches. Unofficially, she smiled. It's ready for something more ambitious. You mean? Jinho stared at her. Yes, my son said. We're going to the moon. To see the truth with our own eyes. 2 weeks passed in a blur of preparation. My son moved the team to a private island in the Pacific where her company had a secret launch facility. The island was small but filled with buildings, a runway, and a large launch pad. How is this possible? Jinho asked as they toured the facility. How can a private company have this? Money and secrecy, my son said, and help from others who want the truth known. The rocket stood tall on the launch pad. It was smaller than those used by NASA, but looked more advanced. Its smooth silver sides had no visible fuel tanks or boosters. This isn't like any rocket I've seen, Subin said, studying it. Because it isn't just a rocket, my son explained. This uses technology we developed based on fragments similar to yours. It doesn't need traditional fuel. Inside a large hangar, technicians worked on a small spacecraft that would carry them to the moon. It looked like a mix of modern design and something from science fiction. We can fit 6 people, my son said. The trip will take just 18 hours. 18 hours. Yun was shocked. But that's impossible with current technology. Current public technology, Jun corrected her. This ship uses principles reverse engineered from ancient designs. For days, they trained in simulators. My son's team taught them how to move in spacesuits and use the ship's systems. At night, Ta Wu continued working on translations from the fragments, hoping to learn more before they arrived at the lunar base. On the 7th day, alarms rang through the facility. "We've been found," my son said, checking security monitors. "3 ships approaching the island. We need to launch now." "We're not ready," Jin Ho protested. "We're ready enough," Jun said firmly. "If they catch us, the truth stays buried." In a rush, they suited up and boarded the spacecraft. My son's technicians worked quickly, preparing for an emergency launch. Outside, the security team set up defenses to buy them time. Everyone strapped in. My son asked from the pilot's seat. June sat beside her as co-pilot, with the others buckled into seats behind them. The engines hummed to life, a smooth, deep sound unlike the roar of normal rockets. The ship rose gently at first, then with increasing speed. "Hold on," my son warned as she pushed the throttle forward. The acceleration pressed them into their seats, but not as harshly as they expected. Through small windows, they watched Earth fall away beneath them. The blue of the atmosphere gave way to the blackness of space. In minutes, not hours, they were in orbit. That was, Ha-Won struggled for words. "Fast," Su-bin finished. "Much faster than should be possible." "And clean," June added. "No multi-stage rockets, no fuel dumps. Just straight acceleration." My son adjusted their course. "We'll reach the moon in 17 hours. You should rest while you can." But sleep was impossible for most of them. The reality of what they were doing, traveling to the moon to find an ancient human base, was too extraordinary. They took turns looking out the windows at the stars and the distant Earth. Ta Wu spent the time studying his notes on the ancient language. As they approached the moon, he called everyone together. "I've translated more of the text," he said excitedly. "The base we're going to, it wasn't just a colony. It was an archive." "An archive?" Jin Ho asked. "Of what?" "Knowledge," Ta Wu said. "The fragments mention the complete history of Earth's children among the stars. I think this base contains records of the entire ancient civilization." My son looked troubled. "If that's true, it explains why governments have been so desperate to control access. Imagine having the entire knowledge of an advanced civilization. Energy technology, medicine, weapons." "We're approaching lunar orbit," Jum announced, checking the instruments. They all looked out the windows. The gray surface of the moon filled their view. My son guided the ship around to the far side, the side never visible from Earth. And there it was, unmistakable against the lunar landscape. Straight lines, circular structures, domes half buried in moon dust. "The ancient base. We made it," Yun whispered. "No," Jin Ho said quietly. "We came back." My son landed the spacecraft carefully on a flat area near the ancient base. Through their helmets, they heard only their own breathing as they stepped onto the lunar surface. Their footprints joined others in the dust, some from NASA astronauts, others much older. "No radio communication," Jun reminded them. "Use your suit-to-suit system only. We don't know who might be listening." They moved slowly in the low gravity toward the largest structure. It was a dome half buried in moon dust, with a dark opening that looked like an entrance. Nearby stood a modern solar panel array and a small rover with Chinese markings. "Others have been here recently," Jin Ho said. "But they left," my son pointed out. "Why leave such valuable technology behind?" They approached the entrance, where strange symbols were carved into the metal frame. Ta Wu studied them through his helmet camera. "These are warning signs," he said, "and welcome signs, both at once." Su-bin scanned the entrance with a device she had brought. No radiation, no dangerous gases. The structure still has some kind of seal. Inside, they found an airlock that still worked after thousands of years. Once through, they reached a large chamber where, amazingly, soft lights came on as they entered. "It still has power," Yun said in wonder. "Some kind of energy system we don't understand yet," Su-bin guessed. The chamber walls were covered in the same symbols they had found on the fragments, but in the center stood something more surprising, a pedestal with a glowing blue crystal. "What is that?" Hadwan asked. Tae-woo moved closer, studying the symbols around the pedestal. It's some kind of data storage." Jin-ho looked around. The whole base is clean. No dust inside. No signs of battle or disaster. They left by choice. And they left this for us to find, Jun added. Subin examined the crystal without touching it. If this is data storage, it could hold more information than all of Earth's computers combined. Tae-woo had been reading the wall inscriptions. Now he stepped back, his face pale even through his helmet visor. "I can read most of this now," he said. "This isn't just an archive. It's a message. They called it the Return Protocol." "What does it say?" Jin-ho asked. "It's a message from our ancestors to us. It says their civilization reached a turning point. They had colonized the solar system. They had technology that could create or destroy worlds. But they faced a civil war over how to use that power." Everyone listened in silence as Tae-woo continued. One group wanted to expand further into the galaxy, build more powerful weapons, control all resources. Another group believed they needed wisdom to match their power. The war nearly destroyed everything. "So what happened?" Yun asked. "The second group won, but at great cost. They made a difficult choice. They decided that humanity wasn't ready for such power, that we needed time to grow ethically before we had the technology to destroy ourselves. They went backwards on purpose." My son asked, shocked. Tae-woo nodded. "They dismantled their technology, removed most traces of their civilization from Earth, left only a few hidden sites with knowledge preserved. Then they used devices to trigger environmental changes. Ice ages, floods, to reset human development." "That's horrible," Hadwan said. "They forced humanity back to the Stone Age." "They saw it as saving us from ourselves," Tae-woo said. "And they left this protocol, a timeline for when humanity should rediscover certain technologies, a plan for our gradual return to the stars." Jin-ho looked at the crystal. "So this contains their knowledge, ready for us to use when we're ready?" "Yes," Tae-woo said. "But according to their timeline, we should have found this 50 years ago. The governments that discovered it kept it secret instead of sharing it as intended. Because they wanted the power for themselves," Jun said bitterly. Subin, who had been examining the room, called out suddenly. "Everyone, look at this." On a wall panel, lights had begun to flash. Ancient symbols appeared, changing quickly. "What's happening?" Jin-ho asked. "I think," Tae-woo said slowly, "the base knows we're here. And it's waking up." The lights in the lunar base flashed faster. A humming sound filled the air as more systems activated. "I think we should leave," Hadwan said nervously. "No," Tae-woo replied, watching the changing symbols. "It's not a warning. It's a welcome." He pointed to one wall where a section slid open, revealing a hidden room. Inside, they found something none of them expected, a perfect holographic projection of Earth, floating in the center of the room. Around it, other projections showed Mars, Jupiter's moons, and distant stars. "It's a map room," Subin whispered. Tae-woo approached a control panel with familiar symbols. He hesitated, then pressed several areas in sequence. The hologram zoomed in on Earth, showing glowing points across all continents. "Archive sites," Jun said. "There are hundreds of them." Jin-ho studied the map. "The governments can't have found all of these." "No," my son agreed. "Which means there's still knowledge out there, waiting to be discovered." Another panel opened in the wall, revealing a crystal similar to the one in the main room, but smaller. "What is that?" Yun asked. Tae-woo read the symbols around it. "It's a message key. The instructions say it can broadcast to all communication systems on Earth at once." Everyone fell silent, understanding what this meant. "We can tell everyone," Hadwan said finally, "everything we've learned." with proof. Should we? Jinho asked. If the Ancient Ones thought humanity wasn't ready, that was their choice, Yun said firmly. They took away our ancestors' right to decide their own future. We shouldn't make the same mistake. My son nodded. And the governments have had this knowledge for decades. They've kept it for themselves instead of sharing it as intended. Jun checked the time display in his helmet. We need to decide quickly. My contacts say several countries have launched missions headed this way. They know we're here. Jinho looked at each person. We vote. Do we tell the world? One by one, they raised their hands. The vote was unanimous. Su Bin connected their communication system to the crystal. Tai Wu carefully removed it from its holder. The moment he did, the crystal glowed brighter. It's active, he said. Everything we say and show will be broadcast to Earth. Jinho stepped forward. People of Earth, my name is Dr. Jinho Park. What we are about to tell you will change your understanding of human history forever. For the next 10 minutes, they took turns explaining everything. The ancient advanced civilization, the deliberate reset of human progress, the secret government agreement to hide the truth, and the archive sites across Earth and the solar system. They showed the lunar base, the artifacts, and the star maps. Su Bin explained how the ancient technology worked. Tai Wu translated key messages from the walls. As they finished, a new alarm sounded in their helmets. Ships approaching. My son warned. Multiple countries. We need to leave. Take the crystal, Jun said to Ta Wu. And this. He handed him a small device. It contains copies of all my files. The world needs to see everything. They hurried back to their ship. As they prepared for launch, they could see distant flashes of light as other vessels approached the moon. Will we make it back? Hawan asked. Yes, my son said confidently. They can't stop us now. The truth is already out. As their ship lifted off, they looked back at the lunar base, this ancient home built by their ancestors. The holographic Earth was still visible, glowing through the entrance. What happens now? Yun asked as they accelerated away from the moon. Chaos, at first, Jun said honestly, when people learn they've been lied to for generations. Then questions, Ta Wu added. So many questions about who we really are. And after that, Jinho asked. My son looked out at the stars. After that, we reclaim our heritage. Not as conquerors of space, but as returners. We go back to the path we were meant to follow. Below them, Earth grew larger in their view, a blue planet where millions of people were just receiving the most important message in human history, that we are not just beginning our journey to the stars. We are finding our way back.